Hi, this is State Senator Ed Kennedy, and I'd like to welcome you all to another edition of the Beacon Hill Buzz. Today, my guest is the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, John Lebeaux. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Senator. Thank you so much for having me.
Commissioner, would you be able to explain to the viewers the mission of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources? My district includes a lot of farms, but it also includes Lowell, and I think we have one farm in Lowell, and that's about it. And that's a Christmas tree farm, as you have in your background. And so I'm not sure that everybody in my district is completely familiar with your department or the important issues that you deal with.
Our mission, I think it's a pretty simple mission, is to help keep the Massachusetts food supply safe and secure, and to work to keep Massachusetts agriculture economically and environmentally sound. And just as you had mentioned, obviously Lowell is either your district or principal part of your district. We have an urban agriculture program as well, and we have some dealings, say, with Mill City Grows.
Could you share with us your background and how you came about to become the commissioner of this department?
Well, actually, I'm a third generation farmer. My grandfather and my uncle were conventional farmers, dairy, produce, market garden in Shrewsbury, Mass, just east of Worcester. And they started that farm in the 19-teens. My dad, after World War II, took advantage of the GI Bill and went to the Stockbridge School of Agriculture at UMass, and had some sense that there was going to be a lot of post-war housing construction. So he studied horticulture, and on a portion of my grandfather's farm, opened a nursery, garden center, landscape greenhouse business, Shrewsbury Nurseries. He and I operated that business for 60 years. 2008, when we all recall the economy really went south, gas was approaching $5 a gallon. Honestly, in the nursery business, most of what you sell is highly discretionary purchase, and we found a lot of people weren't making a lot of purchases then. So consulting with the family, we made the very difficult decision to close the business. Simultaneously, I've always been very active in our state nursery organization, the Mass Nursery and Landscape. I'm a past president there. And I've always been interested in municipal government. So I've actually been and I'm a selectman in my hometown, Shrewsbury. I'm in my 24th year now, my 8th term. And when I closed the business and I became unemployed, I really took a shot. I applied for a town administrator job, and I became town administrator of the town of Princeton for almost 6 years. And, my combination of, strong agriculture background and my background in government put me in a position that made me a viable candidate for the Commissioner of Agriculture position.
Could you elaborate on the duties, on your duties as the Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources?
We both do promotion and we do regulation. So we have 4 programming divisions. Our Division of Agricultural Markets is our principal tool for promoting all aspects of agriculture in the local food system. So whether that's promoting ag fairs, farmers market, farm stands, et cetera. We work very closely with the buy local organizations. I believe Lowell is part of the Northeast Harvest group. That's funded, partially funded through an earmark through the state budget. So that's our marketing tool, and I think we may talk about that a little bit more. And then on the regulatory side, we also in promotion, we offer training programs for new and beginning farmers. We have a suite of grant programs to help our farmers compete and be sustainable and resilient, considering both climate issues and economic issues. But then from a regulatory perspective, whether it's my office or our other divisions, we have an Ag Conservation Technical Assistance Division, an Animal Health Division, Crop and Pest Services. Those do a lot of our regulatory functions. So we regulate produce safety, we regulate pesticides, we do dairy and poultry inspections, we regulate hemp, we regulate pet shops and shelters. That's just to name a few. And then perhaps our signature program, it was the first state program in the nation, is our Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program, in which we actually pay farmers, the Commonwealth pays farmers to buy the development rights from their farm. So the farm may continue to act as a farm, but it couldn't be sold for a non-farming use. Also, the last thing I'd mention is that's kind of the MDAR side. Housed within MDAR is the State Reclamation and Mosquito Control Board, of which I am the chair, and that oversees the functions of mosquito control in the Commonwealth. So I did check Lowell as a member, as I am in Shrewsbury, of the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. So we work very closely with the regional mosquito control districts throughout the state. Should there be an event to do an aerial spray, which happened in great amount in 2019, that's run by MDAR and the SRB. So that's kind of a very high level of some of the things we do at MDAR.
How has the Massachusetts agriculture and the food system changed as a result of the pandemic? The pandemic has changed just about everything in our lives. But in terms of the food system and agriculture, could you speak to that and maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
You know, when the pandemic hit, I mean, obviously, initially nobody really knew exactly how to deal with it. So it certainly provided challenges to agriculture, but it also provided opportunities to agriculture. A lot of folks, were disinterested in going into the supermarkets. You recall at the very beginning, we weren't sure if, touching items, we could transmit the disease through touch. It seems like it's been established that it's airborne. So some folks didn't want to go to places like supermarkets, so it actually built demand for some of our ag operations, farm stands, which led our farmers to have to develop new sales means. So as simple as online ordering. Sometimes you could online order, and then your order would be packaged at the farm stand, and it could be a contact-free interaction. You'd pay online, and you would just go pick it up. Your order would be in a designated space. But we've also seen a great deal of some very innovative entrepreneurial efforts to both aggregate product and provide delivery. So a farm, for instance, that was a livestock farm, produced meat, and was doing some delivery on its own, took it upon themselves, and there are other models like this. This is one that I'm aware of in Central Mass, started aggregating all the things that they don't grow. So they could become a one-stop shop for an online order that would be delivered. So as I mentioned, they grow the meat, they grow the eggs, but they would bring in produce, they would bring in honey, they would bring in maple syrup, they would bring in actually fish products. They would bring in a whole range of product that could be delivered. And I spoke to one of the farmers. They had they were making 2,000 deliveries a week over a very wide area of the state. And that's certainly an area in which that's a big change that folks have gotten into that kind of business model. Certainly there's higher public recognition, appreciation, and awareness of the local food system, that there is Massachusetts produced product available to our residents. And I think a greater amount of folks became aware of that. Some of our agritourism activities, you and I work together on the Agritourism Study Commission. What used to be recreational activities, pick your own, fruit, whether it's strawberries, blueberries, raspberries. The big one, obviously, is apples. Cut your own Christmas trees. That almost transformed into more of a hybrid, the recreational aspects in 2020, particularly. It was an outdoor activity that people could do. So I think it made more customers become aware of that process and kept customers. So I don't think everybody's kept all those customers, but there are new customers. At the state level, the Food Security Task Force was created, which actually brought forth a lot of very important new initiatives. Some of them are kind of in the Ag House and some of them are in other houses. But with us, certainly the Food Security Infrastructure Grant was it continues to be a game changer, a huge influx of funds to help bolster equipment and capital on farms. And we created also what's called the Mass Grown Exchange, which is an online business-to-business connector. For instance, you're a school, you're a hospital, you're a college, and you want to buy, bulk vegetables. This is an exchange where folks post what they have for sale and other folks post what they're looking for. And that's something I think we may continue.
As we transition or eventually transition into a post-COVID time, are there other changes that you mentioned that you would expect to be permanent?
I think many of the things I just mentioned will, obviously people in business, if they find a successful model, they're probably going to keep to it. I think some folks have enjoyed the concept of having virtually almost all their grocery needs delivered to their house. When I mentioned all the different elements, I forgot to mention dairy, so you can get your milk, cheese, butter, etc. there. So, I think a lot of these things will continue, certainly in the near future, and then I think it's going to be more market forces are going to determine if they continue or not.
How about agritourism? As you mentioned, you and I both I sit on the Agritourism Commission, which is a commission that you chair. And how does agritourism contribute to the Massachusetts economy and the tourism sectors?
Sure. Well, I'll back it up. We deal, a lot of the facts and figures I may quote either today or in other presentations comes from the USDA. They do a census of agriculture every 5 years, US Department of Agriculture. And they first used the term agritourism in 2007. That was the first time they started asking farms just exactly what are you doing with agritourism. What we've seen is in 10 years, the last census was in 2017, agritourism grew by 67% in the United States. Here in Massachusetts, we've got 240 farms participating in agritourism. They do over $13 million in business a year, averaging out to over $56,000 a farm. So that's significant. We are, Massachusetts, the 8th highest state in the US for agritourism value per farm. And we're the number 2 state behind Connecticut. We've fallen a little bit. We were 5th and number 1, but we're still, even though we've dropped in the ranking, we gained a 34% increase in average per farm value. So we're all doing very well. And it's an important component. It's an important component to our agricultural economy, whether it's the maize, whether it's the cranberry bog tour, whether it's the pick your own operation. It both educates and connects people to how food is produced and goes right to the farmer's bottom line.
Another thing is wedding venues, right? There's a lot of farms now are wedding venues for farm to table menus, which I think is a good thing and is pretty popular, especially with younger people, and that's most of the people that are getting married. The Massachusetts Agricultural Snapshot for 2021 presentation mentions that farmers face developmental pressures and rising costs. Can you elaborate on these issues?
That's almost a double-edged sword. So here in Massachusetts, we are, I believe, the third most densely populated state in the country. So on the one hand, that huge population, people want places to live. There's constant demand to, build new housing. That's a big push right now. And then, the businesses that serve that. But so that makes it very competitive relative to land costs. But on the other hand, Massachusetts farming, so much of it depends on direct sales from farmers to our residents. So having that big population also helps the farmers to survive. But certainly land costs are tremendous in the state compared to some of the other states in the country. And energy costs. I mean, what needs to be done to heat a greenhouse, to run a dairy operation. Our energy costs here in Massachusetts are higher than other parts of the country. We're running into the same global supply chain issues that we're all hearing about in the news right now. Costs of essential products, fertilizer, feed have just gone crazy. As part of the global supply chain issue, there are the more local, but there's transportation issues all over the place. So those are extreme stressors on agriculture right now.
What other initiatives or efforts has the Department of Agricultural Resources been involved in?
Well, one that your viewers might find interesting, in 2016, when the voters of the Commonwealth approved the ballot question legalizing marijuana, a component in that ballot question was to legalize hemp, which hemp is the best way I can explain the difference between hemp and marijuana is sort of like the difference between a red delicious apple and a yellow delicious apple. They're both apples, but they have some different characteristics. So the biggest determining factor in hemp has a statutory, federally set threshold for how much THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana that gets one high, so to speak, at such a low level that it doesn't have any kind of psychoactive properties. So MDAR received, through that ballot question, we are the agency that runs the hemp program. So we had to develop a hemp program from scratch. And, initially, when the voters approved it in 2016, marijuana and hemp were federally illegal. Marijuana remains federally legal, but through the last federal farm bill, hemp was actually established as an agricultural commodity. So hemp is a legal commodity in the United States. And, we've constantly been adjusting because of, say, that change in the federal outlook. So that's been very interesting to really start with a blank piece of paper and develop a program. Yeah. And it's still getting off the ground. Most of our grant program, another item, most of our grant programs provide direct support to farmers. We decided during the Baker political administration, you mentioned the Food Hub, we did create a grant program called the Food Ventures Program, in which we look one step up the food chain, so to speak. So we're not looking at the farmers, we're looking at these hubs and commercial kitchens. Perhaps, some state dollars could go to an organization that supports multiple farms or multiple food-related organizations. And I did want to mention the Food Ventures Program twice has funded UTEC in the city of Lowell, a great organization. I've had the opportunity to visit there with their community kitchen. So almost $60,000 in 2017 and a little more than $75,000 in 2018 went into UTEC through Food Ventures. So that's very exciting to be able to kind of attack the food system at a slightly different level.
With the holiday season upon us, what should viewers know about shopping local and how to find a local Christmas tree or locally sourced meal?
Well, so for a locally sourced meal, I mean, honestly, a lot of the farmers markets have shut down. There are some winter farmers markets still in operation, but many of the farm stands are year-round operations. So one could go to a local farm stand and source a lot of food for any type of meal. As I mentioned, there are multiple delivery services in the state that provide locally grown food. One could Google that. And as far as Christmas trees, I want to urge your viewers, if they want to buy a tree, buy it quickly this season, because we're really into a little bit of a perfect storm. It takes 8 to 10 to 12 years to grow a Christmas tree. So here in Massachusetts, if you go back in time, that takes us to 2008 when I closed my business, and a lot of farmers weren't doing so well. So they didn't have a lot of money to buy seedlings to plant. So we don't have the greatest inventory in Massachusetts this year. We've got great product and it's out now, but it's maybe not in the same numbers as we've had in the past. And on the flip side of that, a lot of trees do come from out of state. And what we're hearing again, transportation issues. A lot of folks aren't able to get their trees. So for those of you who wait till Christmas Eve, I urge you to reconsider, buy early.
Thank you very much. I think that's all the questions that I have, but I just want to say that I've only known you for a short time, but I do think that you do a tremendous job as the Commissioner of Agricultural Resources. I think before I came to the Senate, I didn't really know much about your department at all. So it's been a learning experience for me. And along with that learning experience has come great appreciation for what you do. And as I mentioned earlier, I've got, there's one farm in Lowell, but there's a lot of farms in the other communities that I represent. And so I've got a pretty heterogeneous a district, actually, with some suburban communities, some rural, farming type communities, and of course Lowell, which would be an urban community. But I want to thank you very much for being on the show. And again, I just want all of you to know that you're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate your very kind words, and certainly we appreciate the relationship we have with you on the Ag Tourism Commission, and honestly, the relationship and the support that the Senate and the House have given us over the years to allow us to do what we think is essential work, maintaining the food supply in Massachusetts and doing our other statutory mandates required work. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And to our viewers, I just want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Beacon Hill Buzz. Until next time, I hope everybody stays safe and healthy. Thank you very much.